Alright, okay, so hello dears. Ayan, so hello dears. Third year students. Wait lang, kaya wala pa ako kaya yesterday nag-record ko sa second year parasitology, tapos ito iba na namang topic, so um, medyo wala pa ako na orient. But anyway, sige go. Again, hello dears, welcome to another pre-recorded lecture to our class in immunology and serology. And for this lecture, what we're going to talk about is one of the fundamental and one of the basic concepts that you must master and you need to know in our class. And that is all about antigens and antibodies. What are the differences between the two? What are the different types of antibodies? The different characteristics and all that. So, sir, anong kailangan? Because this is the bulk of our topic, no, or of our subject. Dili taga-focus. This is it. Ito yung mga bida ng mga star ng Pasko, guys. This is it. They are the stars, or they are really the gist of our subject, no. We are focusing on the antigens and antibodies, no, and their reactions with each other. So basically, so it's only fitting, rather, that we start with an introduction or a lecture about these substances, in a way, antigens and antibodies, so that you get to understand unsay difference sa duha and unsay lang importance, in a way, and how they play a role in our course. Okay, all right. So again, this is the bulk or the fundamental. Again, one of the fundamentals. Fundamental topics that you have to master again, and you have to know so that you will appreciate our subject even more. Okay, so again, daming chika, Mark. All right, so again, these lectures about antigens and antibodies, again, our PowerPoint is, again, created by the one and only, again, Sir Jemu Guasa, together with Sir Jeff Palad, which is, I think, one of our IS teachers this sem. All right, okay. Ayan, so we'll now start with some terminologies, of course. So we start first with serology, no? Since that's one of the title, or it's included in the title of our subject. So serology, the point is, it's a branch of medical science that focuses on serum, all right? So by the name of sero, so serum. So our specimen is serum, and then we study, all right, or we focus on the tests that are to be done on serum, and most of the time these are usually for antigens and antibodies. That's why we have what we call serological tests. Okay, so in a nutshell, that's the meaning of serology. All right, blood serum in regard to its immunological reaction. So there is an emphasis in immunological. So we're focusing on antigens, antibodies. Yes, all right, that's serology. For immunology, of course, with the name itself, immunology is we're focusing on the immune system, all right? Its components, the cells found in the immune system, the different substances found in the immune system, and the different types that can be found, again, in the immune system, or that play a role in really defending the body against invaders, against pathogens, right? Again, it's the host's reactions to foreign substances, and its roots are in the study of immunity, all right? Ayan. So study of the cells, tissues, and organs responsible for recognition and disposal of non-self antigens. All right. So again, in your lecture with Ma'am Teddy, of course, you will get to be introduced to different cells found in your immune system. How are they created? Ilang maturation, mga ganun. Aside from cells, what are the different substances found in your immune system that help in really defending the body against pathogens, like your complement system, you have your acute phase reactants, and all that stuff. All right, so you'll have that in your lecture. Maybe some here sa lab, pero konti lang. All right, okay, but that's the point of immunology. So again, it has its roots in immunity. Now, what is immunity? Immunity is basically the condition of a host or someone or a person, basta a host, that is dili siya matablan ng infection. All right, so di ba? That's what we say. Immune na ta, no? So kanang bahalag pilata pasakitan na immune na ta. So, drama, Mark, ikaw ba to? Tsaka lang. Okay, move on, Mark, move on. Joke. Okay, immune. So, of course, immune, by the name itself, being resistant to infection. Okay? In this context, in our class, kato akong example ganina, char lang to siya. Okay, pa-drama, pa-issue. Alright. Okay, so those are the different basic terms that, I introduced in the first in this slide. Okay, now we go now to immunity. Now our immunity, or our condition being resistant to infection, it has two types. All right, we have what we call the natural immunity and the acquired immunity. Now we now differentiate. We then differentiate the two, natural and adaptive or acquired immunity, sorry. So for natural immunity, it's actually non-specific, innate. So when you say innate, kanang ano ba, magsingot ka kay it's very mainate. Joke. Mark, oh my gosh. Okay. Innate, meaning you already have it once you are born. So naanagid siya nimo daan. Pag panganak pa lang nimo, it's already in you, ana. So that's the point of innate. But it's non-specific. Okay? All right. Whereas for acquired, it's specific and adaptive. Now, for natural immunity, wait. Yeah. So I think it will be discussed later. I'll discuss unsay difference sa non-specific and specific later. And for acquired, the other name is adaptive. So natural, it's also known as your innate immunity. Dili bugnaw, char. I-push doon ako akong joke. And acquired, or other name is adaptive. Alright? Okay. And natural immunity, present at birth, as mentioned. So pag panganak pa lang naani mo, you already have this type of immunity. Alright? Whereas for acquired, it's not present at birth. Alright? Ayan. But it is acquired. Alright. Natural immunity, it's standardized response for all antigens. Meaning, bahalag virus pa na, bahalag bacteria, bahalag parasite, bahalag unsa pa na siya na antigen. This type of immunity, same ra gid siya response sa tanan. Alright? Like, kung ako ihatag nako like muhatag kog antibodies ani, like sa bacteria, muhatag kog antibodies sa virus, muhatag kog antibodies dito. In a way lang ha, that's a rough example. Alright? Wrong example pala. Let's say natural immunity pala. Like kanang yung mga phagocytes, no? Again, there will be examples later. Like ang phagocytes wala sila gipili, right? So bahalag antibiotic, bahalag bacteria, bahalag virus, baka bahalag parasite. All right? So ila dyan pong atakihon. That's the point. So standardized ang response. All right? Sana all standardized. Okay. All right. And for acquired immunity or adaptive, diverse. All right? So it would depend na on the antigen that is there. And generally, kani guys, this is secondary ha. Secondary ang point na. The secondary exposure leads to a greater response. So you'll get to understand that later. I'll discuss that later. Don't worry. All right. Okay. Ayan. And it lacks memory. So wala siya memory. So sige siya kalimot, no? Parehas sa imong mga ex dyan, char. Wala siya memo plus gold. Check lang. So wala siya memory. So meaning, if ever ma-encounter niya itong antigen balik, no? So dili niya ma-remember to siya. Like, iyahang response is still the same. Okay? So kay since wala man siya memory, it doesn't, the immunity or the cells involved in this, or the components involved in natural immunity, wala siya memory. So in a way, pag iyang encounter usab to na antigen, ang iyang response is still the same atong first encounter ato na antigen. Gets? Kaya wala siya memory. Alright? Whereas for acquired, it has memory and it can recall the previous antigen. So example, so na-infected ko na ko og salmonella. Okay? So first infection na siya. So naayon ako. And then, nakuha na ko usob ang salmonella. Damak kay ka. Okay? So example, na-infected na po ang salmonella usob. So ang acquired immunity, ma-recognize na niya. Like, okay, yes, salmonella, I got you. I know you already. You bit. Something like that. Alright? So, in a nutshell, So basically, ang point lang sa natural immunity, guys, is it's your immunity that you already have within you. Wala siya memory, standardized yung response regardless of the antigens na yung ma-encounter. Alright? So it's basically kung unsa na immunity ang naani mo pagpanganak. Whereas ang acquired immunity or adaptive, by the name of adaptive, it's the type of immunity that you develop along your, as you grow old. And as you encounter antigens, different antigens, pag dako nimo, dito po ka mo acquired immunity against those antigens. Nagets lang? So muna siya ang difference between natural and acquired. Alright? So by the name itself pa lang. Alright. Okay. Now we go now to the different line of defenses. No? So for line of defenses, we have three lines of defense. So for the first two lines of defense, okay, under na siya sa natural immunity. So for the first line of defense, of course, by the name itself, first line of defense, so siya ang unang madapuan sa antigen or muna'y first area na kailangan i-pass through sa antigen para siya makasulod. Okay? Alright. So example, skin and mucous membranes, secretions with lysozyme, the acidity of your GIT and vagina, and cilia of the respiratory tract. Okay, so bright yung kay si Lord, no, and amazing yung kay ang body because first line of defense pa lang, like sa outside pa lang usually, or like kani mga secretions na to, it can already kill your pathogens. Okay? But there are some pathogens good na tikasan, no, na may kayo silang manguwat. Yes. Okay. May sila manguwat, no, na ma-surpass nila ang first line of defense. That is why Pero of course, api pa lang dili ta prepare, na natay second line of defense. Yes naman. So kung ang pathogens yes, na pass through nila, no, yes, ang kanila level, first line, naanapon sila yung next level na kailangan i-atubang, and that is the second line of defense. And that is your phagocytes na usually mga cellular inflammation and fever. Your antimicrobial substances na nasa imong blood, mga complement, interferon. So these are just substances, no? Again, you'll get to be introduced in sa lecture na siya and maybe some sa lab. All right. Okay, so that's for the second line of defense. So let's say, so ang bacteria ko no, na-pass through niya ang first line of defense. So, woo! But then again, short-lived ang memory, like, bitch, you thought. Sorry. Okay, so napay second line of defense. So let's say na po, strong jud kayo na siya na pagka-pathogen, no? Intense jud kayo siya. Like very, very kanang effective jud kayo siya na pagka-antigen. So na-surpass niya second line of defense. So nagsadya na siya. But then again, di ba, abinimog humanatanan, naapad your last line of defense, and that is usually your acquired immunity na. The third line of defense, and that is usually the cells na of the lymphocytes, T cells and B cells, because these cells usually, the B cells specifically, they produce now the antibodies. And these antibodies are the ones that can recall, all right, an asylum memory, all right, or kanang, the B cells that have memory, so that pag encounter sa same antigen, it can produce now the antibody specific to that antigen na ilahang na-discover. Alright? So that's acquired. Third line of defense. Muna siya yung pinaka-last nato. Okay? Alright. Ayan, now we go now to the different components of natural immunity. So what are the components, no? So actually both sa natural and sa acquired, no? Na ay both the cellular components and the humoral. So first is cellular, so of course, by the name itself, mga cells. So you have the phagocytes, neutrophils, monocytes, macrophages, right? Okay. All right. Basophils and mast cells, and eosinophils. As you can see, usually these are cells, and mga natural killer cells, or mga null lymphocytes. So a different type of lymphocytes, ha? Basin maglibog mo ganina na lymphocytes po itong acquired. Kanina this is a different type of lymphocyte. Okay. So it's more on wala siya memory pod, and then characteristic ay standardized iyang reaction. The null lymphocytes or natural killer cells. Alright? So basically, by the name itself, NK cells, ilahang patsun by mag-secrete sila og mga substances na para mulize ang, example, bacteria, cancer cells, ganun. Alright, so cellular. So when you say cellular cells, yun, parang na ay solid component. Whereas for humoral, this is like parang the liquid portion, not really liquid, pero parang substances lang, okay? Not necessarily cells. Alright, so for humoral, you have the complements, okay? So you'll have a discussion of that in the lecture. Maybe mo discuss po ko gamay ana complement system. So that's under humoral of the natural immunity. Alright, you have interferon, you have lysozyme, and other antimicrobial substances. So as you can see, ang humoral, ang difference sa cellular humoral, cellular cells jud. Humoral kay usually substances. And usually these substances po, the interferon, lysozyme, are secreted by these cells. Alright, so I hope na gets yung difference between cellular and humoral. Cellular cells, humoral usually mga substances, or para siyang i-describe siya sa Stevens as parang liquid, tama ba? Or like parang soluble stuff, okay? Basta substances. Alright, okay, ayan. Now we go na to acquired immunity or adaptive, di ba? As mentioned, it has both the cellular pa rin. So ang cellular is of course, it's composed na of the other type of lymphocytes, the T lymphocytes and B lymphocytes, okay? Or your plasma cells. And these B lymphocytes or your plasma cells, no? The plasma cells specifically, they are now the ones producing your antibodies, alright? Okay, and of course, for humoral, lymphokines released by, again, substances pa rin released by these cells, and of course, antibodies. Okay? So, ang T lymphocytes, guys, it's a cytotoxic, actually known, an cytotoxic na helper T cell. So, you'll know that again in the lecture, maybe sa lab pa rin. So, they both have memory pa rin, no? So, ang point lang it's acquired, guys, is na siya memory. Alright? Na siya, kabalo na siya. Like, if na-encounter niya ang antigen again, kabalo na siya unsa ang reaction. Alright? Or like, na siya specific yun na reaction against that particular antigen. Okay? So I do hope na gets na. So the key cell involved, as you can see, kay since na-mention magyud siya, the key cell involved is in the immune response are your lymphocytes. Okay? So sila yun na siya. Ang immune response, especially if we're looking for at the kanang acquired immunity na yun, so lymphocytes. Alright? So muna siya ang key cell involved in the immune response. Alright, okay. Now we go now to antigen and antibody binding. So this is your antigen, okay, example. And this is of course your antibody. So there is a specific, alright, there's a specific part of the antigen na i-bind po sa specific part sa imong antibody. Alright, so we'll go into that later. So don't worry. Ayan, so again, this is your antigen and this is your antibody. Alright, okay. First, before we go now to, antigens, antibodies, we'll start first with discussing the antigens. Antigens muna. Alright, but we have to first differentiate the two between immunogens and antigens. Alright, now immunogens are antigens, guys. Okay, so immunogens are antigens that can elicit an immune response. Alright, so ang point lang yun is immunogen, it's a type of antigen. Okay, alright? Pero it's a type of antigen na maka-produce or maka-induce, okay, sa imong T cells, sa imuhang B cells to produce antibodies and to produce an immune response. Okay, that's an immunogen. Whereas, sa difference antigen, an antigen is something that is foreign, okay, again, something that you don't have, something that is outside of you, or basta something that is foreign, alright, and it reacts with an antibody, alright, but it could be that it does not evoke an immune response. Example, you have, example, na ay antigen ni sulod nimo, no? Pero wala siya ni-produce o like immune response, wala fever, wala inflammation, something like that. So, it's not considered an immunogen, okay? So, nagets lang, alright? Okay, basta ang antigen is something that is foreign to you, okay? Something that is not of you, but it does not necessarily evoke an immune response, okay? Whereas ang immunogens, good guys, they are really kanang suspected or expected to produce an immune response. Gets? Alright, so that is why we have this note. All immunogens are antigens. That is correct because diba, immunogens, as mentioned ako, it's a type of antigen. Alright? All immunogens are antigens, but not all antigens are immunogens. Nagets lang. Okay. All immunogens are antigens. That is correct. Your immunogens are actually, again, something foreign, something that is not of you, diba? That is why ni-mention ko ganina na that immunogen is a type of antigen. Gets? But not all antigens are immunogens. Because again, diba, mentioned, your antigens, some antigens may not evoke an immune response, okay? Yes, they are foreign, no? Yes, they are something that is not part of you, but they do not produce an immune response. So they cannot be called an immunogen, okay? I hope na-gets lang ang difference. All right. Okay, but in the book, sa Stevens, sa whatever, kanis lang duha kay gina-used interchangeably. All right? So, kung I think sa book sa Stevens, and when we also refer, or when we talk, magchikata, usually ato nang pasabton or ato nang pagsabot, ang ato pagsabot sa antigen is an immunogen na pod kinay immune response, di ba? So in a way, since kabulo na mo sa technical gyud sa theoretical, so please I hope we use the proper terms na, but even if I think some assume na that if muingon tag antigen or if we mention ang antigen, that is already parang referred, parang denoted na siya as the immunogen, parang ganun. Okay, so, pero ayaw kalibog ato, ako gichika, muna siya ang correct yun na meaning. Alright, so again, antigen, something that is foreign to you, alright, but it does not necessarily can cause an immune response or can produce an immune response in the body. Whereas your immunogens, they are a type of antigen, okay, there are antigens that can produce immune response good. Alright, okay, so muna siyang all antigens, all immunogens are antigens, that's correct, but not all antigens are immunogens. No? Parang tsada siya i-GM. Parang siya quote na pwedeng i-GM check. Alright, okay, so ayan. So that's the start muna. Introduction to the antigens. Okay. Now we go na to some factors influencing the immune response. So like, unsay mga factors na pwedeng maka-influence sa immune response of a person? Of course, number one is age. So of course, if you are the both extremes of age, meaning the youngest ay pinaka-young and katong oldest. So ang youngest, of course, their immune system is not that is not yet well developed. Okay, so of course medyo dili pa strong ilang immune response, whereas katong oldest at the other half of the at the other side of the spectrum, sakto ba? You have the oldest katong yung mga gulang, their immune system is already weak na po because again of age, no, old na kayo, deteriorating na immune system. So you can expect na the immune system there of the old people are, also weak, all right, and they cannot elicit already a strong immune response. Okay, so that's one of the factors that can influence an immune response. Next is of course your overall health. Of course, if you have already like comorbidities, di ba? Sorry. Okay, you have also kana na mga other diseases, samot na mga diseases of the immune system, so you're immunocompromised, you're immunosuppressed, mga inana. So, of course, okay, so of course, dili na po ka-produce og intense na immune response imong immune system, or dili na po siya make or it cannot elicit a strong immune response. All right? Okay, next is dose. Ang pasabot sa dose is dose of the antigen na na-introduce nimo. Of course, if daghang dose, like daghan kaayong antigens ang nasulod nimo, of course, then your body will need to have a stronger immune response to counterattack those number of antigens na nisulod sa imuha. Whereas if konti ra pod, then of course dili ra pod kailangan nila kadaghan. All right, dose. Next is route of inoculation, meaning asa nakasulod ang antigens. So example of intravenous, nasulod siya sa imong veins. So your antigens will pass through the spleen, okay, para dito na mo react or dito na mo sensitize or dito na mo ma-trigger mo mga cells. Alright? Okay. Whereas if diri ra sa skin, like diri lang, okay, like kana superficial, so nari ang ma-trigger ang mga lymph nodes na duol niya. Alright? Basta na ay cells like, the phagocytic cells and all that na ma-trigger. Alright? That's the route of inoculation. And lastly, genetic capacity or genetic predisposition. So example, if you have like genetic diseases or nasa yung genes, no, na amoy disease or like kanang prone mo to inani or weak jud yung immune system, then that could also be. Alright? So these are just some factors influencing the immune response. Alright? So how a person responds to an antigen. Alright? Okay. Or how an immune system of the person responds. Okay. Now we go now to some traits of immunogens. Okay, so what are the composition of an effective immunogen? Like kanang maka-produce gyud og immune response. What are the characteristics? So we'll start first with macromolecular size, meaning unsa kadako siya, no? Iyahang size, no? The size matter, charot. Okay. Next you have the size matter ba guys? For me, yes. Chaka, I deleted it. Abayan, ibang chika. Alright, next you have chemical composition and its molecular complexity. Like, unsay composition sa immunogen? Is it proteins ba? Are they carbohydrates? Ganun. Next, you have foreignness. Like, how foreign, like how layo is the antigen from your species. Ayan, so parang ganun. Okay, and lastly, the ability to be processed and presented with MHC molecules. Alright, ayan, so we'll discuss this in the next video na guys, ha? Again, the traits of your immunogens. Alright.